Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube channel. We're bringing you Dynasty stashes today. Let's jump in to the first one. Zack Moss. Now, ordinarily, I would not call Zack Moss a stash, but it seems like people have forgotten what he did in 2023. 183 carries, 794 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4.3 yards a carry, 27 catches, 192 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Finished as RB31 with 11.97 points per game. But what I like the most is he showed the ability to play both as a complementary back and as a workhorse. With teammate Jonathan Taylor in the lineup, he had 10.1 carries a game, 52.8 yards, and 1.5 catches. Without Taylor, plays workhorse, 17 carries, 62 yards, and 2.5 receptions per game. So he was more efficient as backup, but as a starter, he was able to carry the workload. Additionally, he played well in relief of Taylor when Taylor went down in 2022, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. He's only played well since he's been on the Colts, essentially the whole time since he was traded from the Bills to the Colts in the middle of last year. Still just 26 years old, turns 27 in December. He's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. Now, I'm not saying he's going to sign a big money deal because he's not. I don't think anyone is lining up to pay Zack Moss, $8 or even $9 million a year. Probably going to be more like 6. But he's going to have a role in the NFL as a timeshare back, a backup at worst, probably re-signing with the Colts in the same role he had this year, where he was good and also give you handcuff value. His current ADP makes no sense to me. RB 58, 187 overall. It makes no sense. I don't get it because he's a running back who's shown that he can be good in the NFL. Yes, I know a lot of rookies are going to come in, but he was very playable in the weeks that Jonathan Taylor was out this past year. So these are the kind of players you want to add to your team because if there's an injury, you can sell them in season. If he signs a big free agent contract, you can sell him then. But this ADP makes no sense. So I'm definitely in on him as a stash. Moving into a little bit of a deeper player. And I've talked about this in the middle, I believe, week 16 or 17 during the season, but I just want to bring it up because we're heading to free agency. We have a little bit of a pattern here. In February's DLF ADP and on Sleeper, MFL rolled over, rookies are added to the player pool and rookie fever begins. So players like KJ Osborn fall way down the board. In his career, he's had a 4-year career on the Vikings. He did nothing in his 2020 rookie year, but since then, he's been remarkably consistent, if not special. He hasn't been special, but 2021, 50 catches, 655 yards, 7 touchdowns. 2022, 60 catches, 650 yards, and 5 touchdowns. This year, 48 catches, 540 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, it hurts him that in his walk year, the Vikings drafted Jordan Addison. Kirk Cousins got hurt, which hurt his numbers. But I think teams see that KJ Osborn can play in the NFL. The Vikings need to extend Justin Jefferson. They might need to re-sign Kirk Cousins. They don't need him. They're not going to sign him in free agency. So if he signs any relevant free agent contract, he's going to have more value than he does right now, which is insanely low. Wide receiver 113, 263 overall. I mean, I get it. He's kind of a roster clogger, but what if he signs somewhere better? Is it likely? No. But this price dictates that he's on waiver wires in some leagues. So I would absolutely pick him up because it's hard to get a player who is proven to be an NFL option at that ADP. Last one. And once again, you see a theme. These are all free agents. Now, Jonnu Smith. I don't know if people believe it, but 2023 was his best year in his career. He struggled to develop in Tennessee, but once Arthur Smith went from the tight ends coach to the offense coordinator, Jonnu Smith kind of broke out. 35 catches for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2019. Then a little bit better, 41 catches, 448 yards, and 8 touchdowns in 2020. Unfortunately, in 2021 and 2022, it's where everyone goes to die, the Patriots and the Bill Belichick offensive black hole for those couple of years. But In 2023, the Falcons traded for him, and he rebounded despite being the tight end 2 on his own team. He had 50 catches for 582 yards and 3 touchdowns, career high in targets, catches, and yards. Now, many people have linked Jonnu to the Steelers and Arthur Smith after his release from the Falcons, which happened this week. But I'm not so sure. There are a lot of teams who need tight end. The Steelers have a starter in Pat Freiermuth. They spent a 3rd-round pick on Darnell Washington last year. They really don't need Jonnu Smith. That would be kind of a luxury to spend $5-6 million or whatever it's going to cost on Jonnu Smith. So I think he's probably going to go elsewhere. There are some great options. The Bengals, the Chargers, the Texans, if they don't want to retain Dalton Schultz. There are some options where he would gain a lot of value, especially against this price. Tight end 37, 279 overall. You see from the numbers that he was usable last year, and that was on the Falcons. So there is some upside here. And I would, make sure that he's not on your Dynasty waiver wire at the very least. Because if he signs somewhere good and you can flip him for a 3rd-round pick, that's a 3rd-round pick you didn't have before. Now, if you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, patreon.com/fantasy advice. You can sign up there. You get my full Dynasty ranks, rookie ranks, positional ranks. When the time comes, redraft ranks, and start sit. Plus, you get my rookie pick value scale. So you can see all of my thoughts. Patreon, Discord, DM fantasy advice as well included on the Patreon. So also, patrons get to ask advanced questions for the YouTube. I have actually quite a few of them today. So let's just jump into those right now. What is the best case? So this is kind of a 3-parter. What is the best case for the Commanders going into 2024 draft with how they use their first pick? Would it be a mistake to trade up for Caleb Williams? Would Drake May or Jaden Daniels succeed in Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense? And why do you think Drake May has been falling down fantasy mock draft boards? Do you think he has a high fantasy ceiling? Is it prospect fatigue? Maybe the rise of Jaden Daniels pushed him down. So the Commanders are not going to be able to trade up to number 1. I think Ryan Poles, general manager of the Bears, is set on Caleb Williams. So the Commanders will have to choose from Drake May and Jaden Daniels. I think either one could succeed in the offense. They're both good prospects to me. Unfortunately, I will say I dislike head coach Dan Quinn. I don't really like Cliff Kingsbury. So, and a lot of the noise about the new ownership group. With that said, as bad as that is, I would still rather the quarterback on the Commanders than the quarterback on the Patriots, who have much worse weapons and even more question marks across the coaching staff. So, May and Daniels, both good prospects. Daniels, higher fantasy ceiling. May, better real-life prospect. They're close enough that I'm probably going to prefer whoever goes to the Commanders at 2 over whoever goes to the Patriots at 3. Because they're close to me. They're both good, but they're close. As for May falling down boards, I do think there's some prospect fatigue. I think there's some helmet scouting based on Sam Howell also going to UNC. We saw from CJ Stroud. That doesn't matter. You don't scout the helmet. You scout the player. And mostly, though, I think we struggle when there are prospects in a class that are really good, but they aren't the best in that class because there's a generational one that year. We have that this year with Malik Neighbors. People are struggling to evaluate him because he could be the wide receiver 1 in most classes, but we have Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. And I think we're struggling with that with Drake May a little bit too. May would have been a contender for QB1 last year in the same prospect tier as Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. So I would have had no problem taking Drake May in that same group. So yeah, prospect fatigue, definitely there for May. Next one. Now that the Bengals are spending money on T. Higgins, what are your thoughts on Joe Mixon? I never thought that the Bengals would let T. Higgins go. So this is what I expected. I actually expected them to use the franchise tag and kind of see what happens. The Mixon decision is very simple. He's owed a $3 million roster bonus on March 18th. They're not going to pay it and cut him later. So free agency starts on March 13th. They have a few days to find a replacement in free agency before deciding on Mixon's option. If they sign anyone of note, it means Mixon is gone. They would save $6.1 million by releasing Mixon. They could easily replace him or just release him and try to find someone in the draft. They have Chase Brown, who's okay. But yeah, it's not really related to Higgins. They can afford the $6.1 million for Mixon. I think it's more a question of, do they think Mixon is worth that $6.1 million? I would say no. I think he's been bad. I think they should just cut him and move on. But that's just my opinion. I think they should cut him, move on, sign a cheaper veteran, and then look to the draft to build out the backfield with a third guy to complement the cheap veteran, Chase Brown, and then a rookie pick. But that's just my opinion. How many stashes do you keep on your roster? I thought this was a very interesting question. Is a set percentage of the total roster spots? Do you only keep one or two regardless of roster size? I'm a little confused by this question. What's the alternative to keeping stashes? You have to have something at the bottom of your Dynasty roster. I have Dynasty rankings on the Patreon for a reason, and it helps sort through, how do you evaluate Tyler Boyd versus Jonnu Smith, for example, an older veteran, versus another older veteran, both free agents. How do you evaluate those guys versus someone like Andre Yoshivash, a younger player? How do you kind of mix it all together, like youth versus, production versus everything? So that's why I have that. But yeah, how many stashes do I keep? I mean, I'm fine keeping as many as I can roster. You fill every roster spot. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. Last one. Can you give me your thoughts on your top 4 running backs in this class? Brooks, Benson, Coleman, Allen, maybe the best spots for each. Those are my top 4. As of now, in that order. But draft capital and landing spot are very important to me. Draft capital more so. I'd love to see, my big thing is I would love to see 1 or 2 of these guys sneak into the second round. Third round running backs, we've seen Tyrion Davis-Price, we've seen Trey Sermon, we've seen Royce Freeman, we've seen Tank Bigsby. Third round running back does not guarantee that you have any role or any success at all. If you are a second round pick, you will almost certainly at least get a fair chance. So realistically, I looked at the draft board. The earliest I can see a running back going kind of at all is the Bengals at 49 to replace Mixon. I don't think anyone goes higher than that. I think 49 overall is the highest I could see. Other good spots, the Eagles at 50 and 53 to replace Swift. But realistically, most mock drafts, the first running back has been Cowboys at 56 or Packers at 58 overall. It's usually been Jonathan Brooks, but those have been the main spots for Brooks, who is the one I usually see in the second round. The others I typically see in the third. Other good spots in the second as a possibility, Texans go at 59 and the Ravens at 62. I could see the Ravens because they're just so run heavy that even if they sign someone like Derrick Henry, they could also draft a running back. But the key thing, Blake Corum is the key of these for me. Blake Corum is already 23 and turns 24 in the season. If he goes somewhere where he's not the starter immediately or he's kind of a backup and has to wait, I cannot wait for Blake Corum. He's too old. So if that happens, I will not be in on Blake Corum. All the other ones, I care less about, what it looks like week 1. But Corum has to hit pretty much right away. So just a note on Blake Corum. But anyway, I appreciate everyone watching the video. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, the Patreon, patreon.com/fantasyadvice. Links in that top right corner. And yeah, we're going to keep having content on the channel. I'm probably going to have some specials for free agency, maybe something about the NFL Combine coming up. And then we're going to get into rookie draft season as we hit April and May. But as always, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I will see you all later. Peace out.